You are listening to the People Centric Podcast, where we talk through the toughest challenges that people face at work and give practical advice to fixing those challenges. Thanks for joining our movement to create workplaces that are happier, healthier, aligned, and empowered by putting people at the center of all that we do.
Hello, people-centric people, and good day. Today, we have the Diana Royalty, the Stephanie Anderson, and me, your host so far, Philip Herzog. And our topic is about, even though we love working with each other, we love our clients, I would say all of us are involved in our communities and our families, our dogs love us, we have a life outside of work, and our work life is great. We've been a little on edge. It's been easy to be frustrated, right?
What are you talking about?
Yeah, what am I talking
what
about?
you're saying right now, Philip.
Pipe down over there. Diana, what were you going to add to that? What were you going to?
I don't believe that you're ever on edge, Philip. You're just so warm. You're the one that I need in my life
the
to
one
just
that
calm
counts.
me down.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, I will say, this is my comparison. There have been a lot of days the last few months where I felt a little bit like I feel when I go to the dentist. You know, I usually get a good scorecard with my dentist, but you're like, I just feel I'm in the sound, the buzzing, the not knowing. It's that like in the other room before your dentist comes to you. And I think we all are feeling that for various reasons, right? We
actually
yes.
described anxiety, you know?
That's it. It's diagnosed.
You're like,
for some
I don't
people.
know what's about to happen. Everyone's being loud and weird around me.
Right.
And I just need everybody to get it together.
Just settle down. If only I'm an outliner, go-to whiteboarder outliner. So I'm like, if we just need a plan and if we follow the plan, and I think our whole team has talked about this. Our clients are feeling this too. And so today's topic is how to be a person when that's the case, and especially help others de-escalate, because many of our teams, from executives to frontline people, have shared there's just a different edge around, and we are here to give you some tools to help with that. And so to kick us off, I have a short story to maybe give an example, and then I want to hear from you, your own. We did a training lately, and a story came to mind for me of how to go about this. People-centric, there's 4 simple things we would say that can help you de-escalate. The first is to recognize you're in a situation that's elevated. The second is to empathize, to kind of come alongside someone then, to honor the moment. The third is to build a path to success. And then if needed, to follow up. And years ago, back when I was at Liberty Mutual, there was a day when all of our sales team, and we had some of the top salespeople out of 5,000 in the country, all in our Springfield office. And they came to me, the bravest one, the loudest one, the equivalent of the Diana of the office came and said, not that Diana is loud, she's just the fixer, right, to get it done. They came and they're like, Philip, can you take a call for us? And I was like, sure, what do you need? And they're like, there's this lady that we're afraid of on the other line. And I was like, no way. If these salespeople were afraid, you guys, it meant something. It would be like Batman saying he's afraid. You're like, no. And they said, she yells at us, she's mean to us, she's bullying us. And we want you to talk to her because that's what interns are for. Okay. So I get on the phone and already she's upset. She's yelling. And I don't know how many of you love insurance, but this was a particularly challenging thing, a premium adjustment of thousands of dollars. So it wasn't easy. And she misunderstood some things, but she literally was yelling nonstop. And this is young, like 20-year-old Philip. I think I had just got out of races the year before this. And I said, ma'am. And I finally raised my voice a little bit. And I said, ma'am. And she stopped. I said, I can't help you if you're yelling at me. I said, but I'm here to help you and I want to help you. So can you help me do that? Which again was kind of the empathizing, recognizing. And no joke, she stopped. There was silence for 3 seconds. And I thought, she's going to hang up and this is going to be unfortunate. And she said, okay, I'm ready. And I was like, great. I said, now before we start, it seems like you're upset about your premium. That's important. I said, but is there anything else before we move on? I just think, is there anything else that's bothering you today? And she said, yes, my husband was diagnosed with cancer and he used to handle all of this. And that's the moment where you're like, okay, now we're really dealing with way more, right? And she was on all the 1-800 numbers. These salespeople weren't really leaning in. And it just took 2 questions. It literally took 12 seconds. I said, okay, hey, first of all, I'm so sorry. That sucks. It sounds like he's really great. So we talked for like a quick minute about him, and I was like, okay, well, this is what we can do. We talked about different options. I connected her with the right team member at Liberty, right, and stayed on the call and just said, hey, she's not used to this process. The person she really cares about is the one that normally handles it. Let's make sure we take good care of her. All right, Barb, send you on your way, right? And I think it's a great story because it just shows a lot more was going on than simply a frustration. And a really angry client had reason to be angry, but more was going on as well. And so that story just to interest into my first question, which would be Stephanie, Diana, I would love to hear from you. What's a recent example you've seen where someone was able to de-escalate really well? You're like, that's the gold standard of de-escalation.
I'm going to give a shout out. I was just talking to our friend Shane at Arvest today. I don't know if Shane listens to the podcast, but he should if he doesn't. But I was talking to him, and in his free time outside of work, he is a sports referee. And so he was telling me a story of a game he recently reffed where it was soccer. So he had to give a yellow card to a player for like an aggressive tackle. Because I don't know if you knew this, but in soccer football, you can't tackle people. That's the other football. And so he was saying that, yeah, this one player kind of like side tackled another player. And he walked over to the player that was on the ground and was going to offer them a hand up. And as a former hot-headed soccer player, you don't always want the ref helping you up because you don't know what call he's about to make on you. And so he walks over and reaches out his hand and looks at this person and says, well, that wasn't very nice, was it? And he told me just in that moment, he saw this person's demeanor just completely change. And I did tell him, I was like, that was like a beautiful de-escalation execution, because I think when moments happen and we get mad or something triggers our anger, we go into fight mode, right? Like even those of us that might normally be a flight, like we get ready, we brace ourselves for the fight. And saying something like that when somebody's like, okay, the ref is about to come over, and I'm going to have to fight with them to argue why I should not be given a penalty, why my team should have the ball, that the ref goes, well, that just wasn't very nice, was it? And it just completely changes your mindset in that moment to be like, oh, yeah, no, it wasn't nice. But we're going to move on with the game. Like, we're going to keep playing. And that's the most important thing here, instead of like launching into the fight. And I'll say, like, I've seen our team do this sometimes. We've been in situations where an employee is super heated, super mad at their boss or a supervisor, or even like they are getting ready to quit, walk out the door. They're threatening to sue the company, all of this. And I can think of one story with Don specifically where he just looked at the person who was like so angry, getting ready to leave, threatening to sue the company, which is a nightmare situation in a business. Looked at this person and just said, well, this just wasn't what you expected, was it? And I think asking a question instead of saying, well, here's what I know and here's what you know and this is what we're going to do, just like having a moment of like, yeah, this wasn't what you wanted, was it? Or this wasn't what anybody wanted, or this didn't go how you expected, or well, that just wasn't very nice. Is like, it almost shocks the brain in a moment because you're prepared to fight.
Yeah, that shock. I was going to say both of these stories, it's the shock that gets those people out of, I'm going to call it the lizard brain. I don't think that's really what it is, but it's that reptilian, just like all emotion driven brain. And I have been rewatching Ted Lasso. It's such a great show. If you haven't watched it, you should totally watch it. But there's this scene where one of the players gets really mad about something. I don't even know what it is because I can't remember right now. And he like storms off, and then a coach goes in there, and the coach is like a really rough, mean coach. He's like, his name's Roy Kent, and he just like growls at everybody. And the coach went in there and went to talk to the player, and the player was like, I do not need you in my face yelling at me right now. Leave me alone. And the player stood up, and the coach just gave him a hug, completely out of character, but just like held him and hugged him. And then after that, the player took a step back and was like, oh, now we can talk, right? And whatever you did, you shocked me out of my like anger, emotional brain. You let me do something different. and now I can talk to you. And the level of just, I don't know, foresight and emotional intelligence that takes in that moment for you to also not be lizard brain triggered is so hard. It's so hard to do.
I love that it's kind of the human shock factor, each story of like, hey, that wasn't very nice, was it? Or like, hey, help me help you. What else is going on? It's your husband with cancer. To the hug. And I think that's such a powerful piece. Diana, you said specifically how to kind of catch that early. So I'm curious from you, whether it's for yourself or times when we work with clients, because Stephanie, you said it great. We come across people all the time that have deep feelings and are really in deep stories and have had real experiences. How do people know? What is your advice to help them recognize it early on? Because there's kind of that moment, if you're not shocked out of it, then it goes down a hill where you're fighting each other instead of helping each other. So what's your advice to help shock yourself out or that human shock for someone else?
I would say for me, my advice was like, it's actually more about you than the other person in that moment. Because if you're walking in thinking like, well, I'm going to de-escalate this and I'm going to X, Y, and Z, then you're actually just thinking about that other person and you're just preparing yourself for their reactions versus understanding what your reaction will be. Because I'll say, like, honestly, the emotional intelligence to like do the shock moment and just to ask a warm question or to do the hug really speaks to the emotional intelligence of the person who does that. And so I would say for me, because I'm a naturally more assertive person, I grew up in a household where like our dinner table conversations were nearly national debates. Like I could argue about anything, really. And so like if I know that about myself, then I just have to get better at recognizing when I'm angry. And I think one thing that I've processed in my life that therapy has been really helpful for is that anger actually is not a useful emotion for me. So it's not a useful emotion. What I mean by that is like it actually doesn't serve me and the person I want to be, the leader I want to be angry. So if I feel myself getting angry, that's actually my flag. So anger isn't an emotion I act on, but it is an emotion I notice. And so if I get angry, I have to then be like, "Oh, you're angry." And I say that in my head to myself. Or, if I'm in my car because I've just read something, I'm like, oh, you're angry. And just acknowledging that emotion. And the more I can recognize it, then I can decide what to do with it. And then I can be like, okay, yeah, I want to practice better de-escalation or better emotional intelligence. The leader that I want to be would ask a question in this moment instead of trying to win or to dominate this person or to be right. And I'll just say like that's one thing even in my personal life, like it's a polarized world right now and it's really hard. And I think, man, those conversations get me angry pretty fast these days. And so something I've even been practicing is if I notice myself getting angry, it's like, okay, how could I bring this conversation back to the human level? And what I'll often notice is when we're angry, we start using they, them language. And sometimes, like, I've looked at a family member before when they've been like, well, they this and they that. I'll be like, yeah, but you're talking to me right now. It's just you and I talking. So can you and I talk about this? Because they aren't here. And we can't solve all of their problems and we can't change all of their opinions, but like you're talking to me.
I love that you said that. I guess I was like, what is this emotion of feeling angry about potentially being wrong that you speak of? I just don't typically have that. You kind of
Well,
were inferring, I'm
not
always on
all
the
of
right
us are
side.
as nice
Everyone
as Philip. I'm just
is,
gonna say that.
yeah. I just win
But
friends over and then invite myself to their house for dinner. And then that's when we unpack. No, I love what you shared. Maybe mine is a small piece for me. Sometimes I think it's when I'm really stressed and the ideas in my head are whatever the person is saying, and my next words are like, sure, sure, yeah, you might think this, or they might do that, but, and my but is really big. That's when I know I'm like, I am ready to escalate, as opposed to like, yes, and and what about this, right? Or like, yeah, if your mindset in the story of the referee is like, that guy's a jerk, and just leave it there, it was like, hey, I'm going to acknowledge that wasn't great. I'm not going to discount what happened. I don't need to hyper fixate on it. How can we look ahead together, right? Kind of yes anding it as opposed to like digging into finding out who's right and losing focus of what we're really trying to do together. Diana, what would you add to that?
Well, I think your question was like, what are the steps to diffuse? I can't remember exactly what the question was, but
Yeah. How do you know? How do you catch yourself early on to recognize the moment?
yeah, how do you recognize the moment? That's what sparked in me. And I was like, not thinking about myself in that. I think because it's hard to recognize yourself when you're like boiling over. But as consultants, we see that from others a lot, right? We can see it. And so one of the things I learned really early on in that situation when someone else is there is it happened by accident. I'm a processor. And so like I'll freeze and just like have to process information. And so when someone's at this really high emotional state, I was just sitting there and I paused because I could not process all of the information that was happening. So I would just pause. And a lot of times, just that pause, that like 5 seconds, because I wasn't like staring blankly for 20 minutes, right? It was 5 seconds of just like, oh, that was wild. What do I do now? Right. And that just 5 seconds of pause allowed someone else to also pause and recognize that there was like a moment of silence. And then they kind of were like, oh, that was why I let my emotions get the best of me there. That was wild. And then it allowed me to have a second and just be like, okay, now I need to ask a good question, or I need to give them a hug, or I need to, see what really is going on here. And I think that pause is super powerful in these like high emotional settings where it's just like, okay, just take a minute. Just both of us just breathe for 2 seconds.
I love that so much, and I've seen that happen, and I've been a recipient of a pause like that before. And I'll also tell you, I think from the person who's sitting across from you in that moment, the pause also shows that like you're actually taking a moment to listen, to like consider what they've just said. Because a lot of times, and I say especially in the workplace, like if someone's angry, they're coming to you maybe as the manager, leader, friend, and they're going to tell you a story. And they're telling you because they're assuming like you don't know, and they want to hear, you want them to hear your side of it and understand that better. And so the pause there, I mean, Diana, I love that you were like, I actually just need that pause to think, which is so true. But it really does make the other person feel like, wow, you actually are taking a minute to like consider what I just told you, what I just said. And then, yes, absolutely, it gives them a moment to gut check and say, like, oh, maybe I did just overreact. Again, like, sometimes the work and life topics are relevant. Just also did that in a personal situation. And it was with my sister, and she did the pause, and I even got done, and I was like, this was a beautiful, like, de-escalation, emotional intelligent moment. I'm very proud of you as a sister. But there was a conversation happening and someone reacted very, very loudly in the moment. And she looked at them and she was like, hey, we'll just stop. But like, we're okay. We're okay. Like, everybody here is okay. And she just kind of let it like that, like hang in the air for the moment. And then that person was able to look at her and say, oh, yeah, you're right. I did just have a really emotional response and reaction to that. And I think I'm just scared. I think I'm scared of this. And I'm scared of us not being friends anymore if we can't agree on X, Y, or Z. And she was like, oh, well, that's not going to happen.
Such a powerful example. After someone talks about a pause too, there has to be a pause. When there's not a pause after a pause conversation, you just look like a dummy. So I did not pause long enough, but I think it was warranted.
I always am worried that people think that I'm dumb because I'm just like processing. Just give me a minute. I have to think. I
Right,
really have
right.
to think. Yeah.
That's it. But it is such a, I think for both involved, right? And sometimes in a way, it's almost a mirror. Like the silence gives the space. I think as much as the volume of emotion can take, that pause in a way, I think it lets it actually go somewhere. And almost like it's like it lets it settle, which, Steph, to your point, I think it's good because you can say that you're heard. And I think our team has seen that happen too, where then a leader might say, like for them, that's a moment. There's maybe something they've shared with us they've never said out loud before. And when it comes out, sometimes viscerally like that, maybe it's anger, maybe it's disappointment, maybe it's a form of like grief or frustration. And again, we're not therapists, but we do talk about really meaningful things with people. I think there's kind of a realization that can happen, a reflection on what just happened. And then Diana, to your point, when they're like, oh, and then that's almost always the greatest moment of clarity or insight for them as well, because it came from their own lips and they realize this is actually how I feel. I'm not guising it under my corporate stated policy anymore.
Yeah. And I always tell people that I coach, like when they tell stories about whatever, about their emotions, I always tell them that if reactions are a scale of 1 to 10, if your reaction for anything is above a 5, it's not about the thing that just happened. There's something else going on. So like in your story, Philip, the woman's reaction about the premium was very elevated, right? But it wasn't about the premium. It was about the fact that her husband was sick and she was scared and she's now having to deal with this stuff. And there's fear and uncertainty and financial uncertainty, like all of that underlying this. And so her reaction was above 5. And you did this really great thing where you just said, like, what else is going on, right? Like, what else is going on here? Because you could tell there was something else under there. And I think a lot of people forget to think about what else is under there, what's really causing me to be this elevated about a thing.
I think that's such a powerful thing. And Stephanie kind of said anger, if anger or frustration, however people listening would call it, which happens again from people at the very front line, how you answer the phone and all those really complicated people on the other end with needs, apparently, or leaders where you're leading and your team around you with humans who have really complicated needs, apparently. All of us as people come across these moments where we get so frustrated, and maybe I call it like a tunnel vision. And so that angst or that anger, I would say that's a good time when it can make you curious. Because I would like to say, if you can get to the root of I am angry because why, that probably is more helpful because it leads you to what's actually happening. And sometimes it's a bundle. It may not be just the one thing, but what's the bigger thing that's making that anger so real, so present? So maybe as we start to round out, I'm really curious for all of you. This is a cheater nuclear question. We didn't talk about this in advance. What do you do as a leader if you're at a point where you'd say, yeah, I tried to be emotionally intelligent, right? I know there's a lot going on with this team member, but they are inconsolable. And it's not just one conversation. Now it's multiple times. It's just beyond my scope. What advice would you give that leader?
Man, this is so difficult. I encourage everyone to go to therapy, right? Like leaders cannot hold all of these things on their own shoulders. And then I also hope that there are resources in place for people in companies like employee assistance programs. And, I think if you get to a point where like this person is really hurting, they need deeper help, right? Were you kind of thinking like that sort of deep, or where were you thinking about?
I think it could be, yes, I think that's a great direction to take it, or to the practical side too. We've talked with teams before to say, hey, did you know that when you're having situations like this, or how you're coming across, you're like, I want to help you still be functional here. And so what's our game plan? And that's, so to your point, I think there's great resources that can help with that, but also, hey, like what's a plan then to help you be able to show up really well? Because if these things are really pressing on your mind, it matters. But also, how do we support you? How do I support you keep moving forward, essentially?
Yeah. And I always remind leaders in those situations, like, yes, you want empathy. Yes, you want to help them, but also they do have to do a job for you. And you can make concessions and you can change the job a little bit and you can take on more for them, or you can shift things around. And I think all teams are willing to pick up slack for people in crisis or people in a moment, right? I think we're all human and we want to do that. So I think having a discussion around, I'm willing to help you, but here are the expectations that are still set on you, regardless of how you're feeling. And if you can't handle these things, then maybe we need to talk about like a leave of absence or some PTO or whatever that looks like. But yeah.
When you asked that question, Philip, I thought about more like maybe like the toxic person at work instead of like somebody who's maybe going through something personal. Because I 100% agree with everything you just said, Diana. Like if someone's really going through something personal and so their reaction is more rooted. But I do think there are moments, I'll say I've heard from leaders where like they ask that person, is there something else going on? And the other person's like, nope. And either there isn't, or they are not willing to go there. Maybe they don't even really understand why they're reacting the way that they are. And so I think in that moment, like my recommendation would be like, yeah, lay out their paths. Like, what are the options for them then? Like, if they are just going to be an angry person at work, if they are going to continue responding poorly, then what are the things that could happen? And like give them their options. So the options like could be like, hey, like you go and apologize to this person on the team and like you reconcile. And then I want you to like show me how you're going to like work with this better, or it could be like, yeah, we're going to change this about your job for right now because like we need to know that like the job can still get done. And if you're not able to like kind of mentally, emotionally handle that right now, then this wouldn't change. Or I'm going to throw this one out there is sometimes it's offering people an exit and like giving them an out. Like I can think of a story once where I was talking to a leader where there was just somebody who'd been with their team for a long time and who had become toxic over time. And everyone in the office kind of avoided them, didn't want to work with them anymore, knew they weren't doing a good job. This person was reacting poorly when people were asking them to like do some of their basic job functions. And I remember talking with that leader and I kind of asked them like, so why do they still work here? Like, what's their motivation? What's their reason for being here? And what they kind of were able to boil it down to, they're like, well, it's probably just a sense of loyalty because we've all worked here together for a long time. We're all friends. And I think they're just trying to like, honestly, like be loyal to the team. But I think they do hate their job. Like, I don't think they like it here anymore. And and I will say for the record, this employee had said things like that before and had dropped some comments that maybe they didn't like their job and maybe they were like thinking about something else. And I said, well, what if you just like offered them an out? It's not firing them, but it's saying like, hey, I'm just seeing you really, really struggle here. I'm seeing you not enjoy it. I'm seeing you having a hard time doing these things. And so, like, if this isn't a good fit for you, like, that's okay. And let's figure out, like, what it would look like to help you find something that is a better match for you. Or let's find a team that maybe you can align with and do some of that. Let's get you on the right path. And I think depending on the situation, we've seen people offer like nice exit packages or doing something nice for a person who they're like, yeah, they're great, but this is a bad fit. Or honestly, if they are really toxic, one of the paths might be just saying like, hey, like if you aren't able to stop fighting with people and picking fights with everyone, then this won't be a good fit for you. And so one of the paths before you is you exiting our team, whether that's your choice or my choice. And that's the path I don't want us going down. But here's what the options are today.
You said it so well, how to support them in essentially the crisis mode, or, on our topic of de-escalation. We're really talking now about that de-escalation follow-up as a leader, essentially. Because if you're in the moment and you have high EQ and you help them through it, good, gold star. But then second, it's not helpful if you just leave then that team member, that coworker, you never talk about it, you never address it, and it keeps happening again and again and again. So I love that we laid out, there's still a job to do. And so going back to that management cycle, if I have feedback for you, am I giving it? How do you respond in that? And Steph, to your point, if someone's pushing it back, like, no, my behavior is perfectly acceptable, my emotions are mine, and I will behave exactly as I choose to, but I'm not going to talk about anything that might be wrong or that's bothering me. They're really limiting your options as a manager. And so then accountability is, well, this is not what a team member looks like. Problem solved. On the other end, though, if it's like, hey, I'm really frustrated about this person or this process or this thing beyond work that's on my mind, then that's something a leader can work with. You can coach and develop them through that, as opposed to vaguely wandering through. I think this is an area HR teams tend to talk to us about. Leaders don't always know how to handle this. and they're afraid of the people that are like this. But having that guide and clarity to recognize the process, help find a pathway forward with empathy, that's important. Any final takeaways?
Thank you for bringing this topic forward. I think it's timely.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah. I think it is very timely. It's something we're seeing people struggle with. Everybody's just a little on edge. So it makes it hard when your job is people and you have to do customer service and you have to get along with everybody on the team. So this is a good one. Good idea, Philip.
That's good. I appreciate all of you, of course, our team. I think we all support each other in different ways. There's been many moments that felt big and stressful where our team circles around each other. And I think that's a good sign of a team. My last very short story would be, I worked with a team once where they made a joke. Everyone knew who the leader was that was very stressful because they joked their Apple Watches told them the blood pressure increased when that person walked in the room. And so the final caveat could be, if you're that person, now you're on notice, and use the Fitbit information around you to see, are you really escalated? Are you really stressed? That's the sign. But great.
I keep feeling attacked. I'm sorry that I keep elevating your blood pressure.
It was you. I know we compared notes. That's
every time.
That's the group chat without you in it. How high? Stephanie has the record so far. The hot-headed soccer player. Well, that's it for today, people listening to the People Centric Podcast. I hope your blood pressure has been lowered. And we always say it's easy to have high EQ with high EQ people, way harder to have high EQ with low EQ people. So that is your challenge. Give us your feedback. Ask us if there's other topics we could talk about. Be well and lead well.
Thank you for listening to the People Centric Podcast. We are so grateful for you joining us every week. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Also, feel free to share on your social media with everyone that you know. It really does help us. If you would like to contact us, I have put our information in the show notes. Please reach out anytime. We love hearing from you. We will be back next week with a new topic. Until then, be well and lead well.